Thanks everybody for being with us at the Caring Conference. I'm Denise Brown and I'm thrilled and delighted to introduce our next presenter, Kandis. She's going to talk to us about courage during life after caregiving. Okay, take it away, Kandis. Kandis, you are muted.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to thank you, Denise, for allowing me to be here and coming to speak to everyone about what happens after caregiving. I am a National Illinois advocate for the Ovarian Cancer Research Alliance and a contributor on caregiving.com. During the day, I do community health work in Chicago, in the Inglewood and Chatham neighborhoods, which is service predominantly African-American communities. So, thank you for joining me today. And I look forward, to speaking a little bit more about some things that happened to me during my caregiving journey. So as everyone knows, life can throw you a curveball. And when I say a curveball, a serious curveball, especially when you're starting when caregiving happens to you and it happens to you all of a sudden. I was just shy of my 30th birthday when my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. I had my first job right out of college. I was there for about 3 years. And then it literally happened the day after Thanksgiving when we were at home and she all of a sudden got sick, started having severe pain. And I was at home and I had to rush her to the hospital. So really quickly, life got really real. And so what do you do when everything stops? We get to the hospital, she gets diagnosed. They tell us that she didn't think that she was going to live more than a year. But, thankfully, she did live for 3.5 years after that. But everything stopped in the moment that she told me that when the doctors told me how she got diagnosed and, her life expectancy. So as you can imagine, what do you do as caregivers? What do you do when everything stops? In other words, when life gives you lemons, how do you deal? When life gives you lemons, you just make lemonade. That's what they say. But it isn't always as easy as they make it sound. I think everyone can echo my sentiments on that one. So 24 hours later, I was wondering what to do, how to do it, and then my caregiving duties began. Shortly after my mother was diagnosed, my 2 younger siblings, they were very, very young. They were about 5 and 9, and then I ended up having to look after them as well once she got sick. When my mom died in 2014, 3.5 years after she lost her battle with ovarian cancer, I still had 2 younger siblings to look after. At the time of her death, they were 8 and 13 years old. So I became an instant parent as well. My dad was around, but I was the one that was at home. And there are 5 of us siblings, but I was the only oldest one who lived in Chicago. So once my mother died, and as she got sick towards the end of her life, I became the primary person looking after them. To throw a wrench in it, my younger sister had health issues as well. My younger sister had a liver transplant, and she started having complications. When my mother died, she wasn't taking her medication like she was supposed to. And actually, the week that my mother went to Cancer Treatment Centers of America for some more extensive treatment, my little sister ended up having to be admitted to the hospital the very same week that she was in treatment. So it was like I was ending the day with my mom on the phone, and then on the phone with my younger sister and her doctors here at Lurie Children's here in Chicago, trying to figure out how to balance both. So as I mentioned, caregiving continues because now I was a parent. So I think every caregiver, when you're going through this, you feel broken and you feel overwhelmed. My day consisted of taking them to school, come home. After losing my mother, I would sleep, I would eat, I would get up, I would make sure that they were okay, get them home, make sure they ate, making sure that they had food, and doing homework with them and all kinds of activities. But I had this feeling inside that I didn't know how I was going to move my life forward because I didn't know what I was supposed to do at this point. And when a loved one dies that you're caring for, you feel a lot of guilt. Maybe there were some things that you didn't do properly or felt that you even could have done better. You relieved, but you're also tired. One thing that I always tell caregivers whenever I talk is make sure you take time to rest. Sometimes you go through feelings of, do you not feel needed anymore? That's another thing. That's normal. Financial difficulties, seek help as best as you can. Example of financial difficulties. In my situation, my mother's sickness took me out of the workforce. So for 7 years, I didn't work. I left the workforce at 30 and I didn't re-back enter till I was about 37, 38. I had a lot of difficulties during that time financially. When I say difficulties, I don't mean I didn't have a place to live and things like that, but I did have student loan debt. I did have a lot of other things that piled up on me that ended up, being a really, really big loss. And so whenever I speak to people, we always talk about the financial downside sometimes of caregiving, how it can really affect you, sometimes because you're not always prepared. But for everyone who's been here and who has gone through this, just like we learned earlier, take a breath and realize you did your best. So let's talk about after caregiving. One of the things that I did was I sought a lot of counseling. I kept my siblings, I kept them really busy, positive activities, church, sports, music, etc. I joined a gym. I met a wonderful group of women, gained valuable friendships, and took charge of my health. Because I wasn't working, because I had no health insurance, my health really, really suffered during this time. I ended up being, really sick for a period of time. And I was able to, finally able to talk to my doctors, figure out what was the best plan of action for me going ahead. And it was really due to all the stress that was happening to me around the time that she died and after. So here's what I want everyone to know, that it is possible to rebuild your life. So think about, what did you do before you started this caregiving journey? Did you want to go back to school? Were you in school already? Did you have aspirations that you wanted? Did you have hobbies? When you're a caregiver, do you have opportunities to connect with friends? And not always. Do you have a support system? Do you have anyone there for you? If you don't, here's a good time to reach out and start rebuilding those connections that you used to have. So I wanted to make sure I talked about some obstacles I faced during my job hunt after caregiving. I didn't start back job until I took my younger sister to college. And I was about 38, 37, 38. And yes, I'm saying my age. I'm not embarrassed to say how old I am. So one of the things that I learned was how difficult it was going to be for me to actually get back out there and start working. When I would go for interviews, I was really looked at like I was a stay-at-home mom, like I had stayed home to raise kids. And, now the kids are out of the nest. Difference is I was just a sister. I was an older sister, but that's one of the things that I faced going back into the workforce. So I got many interviews, but I was not hired. I can't tell you how many I went to, how many times I went to second and third and fourth rounds of interviews just to be told, no, you can't work, or we're going to go with somebody else, or it's been nice to meet you, but thank you, but no thank you. And I would sit at a coffee shop, submit tons of applications every day just to be rejected over and over and over. And this happened for months. And, when you are job hunting and you get rejection from potential employees, something like this can really, really hurt your self-esteem and your self-worth. I don't know if anybody has ever felt that, but this can really mess with you mentally, because it's not that that you don't have the ability to do it, but you really want an employer to see you. And most of the time you just wanted a chance. And that's really all I wanted, was a chance. So here's some of the things that I did. I hired a professional to redo my cover letter and resumes. I often felt guilty going into an interview saying what was going on with me. I had a conversation with a really close family friend who told me that, hey, you have a story, and it's a unique story, and you don't need to apologize. You were taking care of a loved one. You learn new skills. You learn new strengths. You need to say that, and you need to document it on your resume. And I thought that was a little silly, because I had never seen that before. But when I would go into interviews, especially if I was going to babysit, or if I was going to, try to work my way back in where I was, And then when they asked me, well, how long were you doing this? In some instances, it did help, especially when it became temp jobs. So that's what I wanted to say too. Don't apologize. You know, it's hard to take on this type of role. So what you don't want to do is feel bad about it, but be honest and transparent and say that this is what was going on. I also used my network. Sorry, let me go back. I also used my network. I used college alumni networks. I went to a lot of networking groups. Another thing I did, I volunteered religiously. I always went to different volunteer networking groups. I did a lot of my advocacy work started because I just had a question about ovarian cancer and how it affected Black women and different things like that. If Illinois had a chapter, if they, you know, how I would get involved. So I did a lot of Google searching, and then that's how I got involved with the Illinois chapter here, got involved with the run walks here. That led to me learning about Gilda's Club, where I'm now an associate board member. That got me onto doing the Illinois advocacy work that I do. So it was, and then from that, I met a lot of different people who led me to a lot of different opportunities. So that was one of the major things that I did after being unemployed for a 7-year stretch was volunteering. Volunteering led to networking, and networking opened more doors for me. So another thing I wanted to say is that while you're going through grief and while you're going through trying to figure out how to rebuild your life, don't make quick decisions. When you make quick and hasty decisions, you tend to make a lot of mistakes. Please know and understand, like I said, you didn't waste these years. And be proud of the decision that you made to look after your loved ones. Another thing I did that really, really has helped me, and I call it the second shift. So I have my regular day job, and then I have my advocacy, speaking, podcasting, and blogging that I do, and I call that my second shift. So what do I want to say is you can turn your pain into purpose. You know, tell your story. Everybody kept telling me to tell my story as to how I was and what was going on with me. And so the challenge of life, as Oprah says, is that I found to build a resume that doesn't simply tell a story about what you want to be, but it's a story about who you want to be. And literally that's what I have my regular work resume, and then I have my second shift resume. So I have all of the advocacy work, all of the different workshops and stuff that I've done, all the speaking things I've done, panels I've sat on talking about ovarian cancer awareness, cancer advocacy, cancer disparities in minority communities. And then that opened up another doors for me to be known and recognized and things like that. So it was a long road and it wasn't an easy one, but I'm glad that I took the first step and I stayed focused and I just continued to do it. So this is what I do now. This is my second shift. So I speak, I write, I blog. So if you see the picture on the right-hand side on the bottom, that's Gilda's Club Associate Board. We had an event here in Chicago at the Columbia Yacht Club. The middle one, I don't know if anyone has heard of Lee Silverstein. He was the first person that I spoke to when I wanted to talk about my advocacy work and my caregiving experience. And I spoke on We Have Cancer. I'm on Black Cancer, the podcast. The top right on the left was a breast cancer event that I spoke to about my advocacy work. I'm a contributor for caregiving.com. So I was nominated for a Visionary Award, which made me very happy. So these are some of the things that I do now, aside from my day job. Something I'm also really happy about is that this Sunday here in Chicago, Twist Out Cancer, I don't know if you know that Twist Out Cancer provides psychosocial support to survivors and caregivers through creative arts. So they do have a Brushes with Cancer Midwest. They have different people that they choose that are persons of inspiration. And then they are then paired with an artist, and you go through a 5-month period, and then the artist depicts your cancer journey. So the painting on the left is actually what we came up with. You know, it's a picture of my mom in the front, and then it's us holding hands, and then there's other different symbols representing siblings and piano keys because I play piano. It's a lot of different symbols in there, but I'm very happy to be part of that program. That comes to its conclusion on Sunday, but I was really happy about the process that we went through for that. When you're going back out into the workforce, do not be afraid. It's going to take some time. But I think with everything, perseverance and hard work will really, really pay off. I really have to say that I think that the one thing that kept me going is that I was really trying to figure out what steps can I take to rebuild my life. I had a lot of hard moments. Um, I used to drive a really beat up old car, and one day I was stranded on the road, and my window was down, and it was the dead of winter in Chicago, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to, get help, or I didn't have any money. I ended up having to work 2 temp jobs just to make one. I went through, this was a hard process, but I was determined and I was focused. And, eventually I realized that the hard times, they were there, but they didn't last. So I was able to pull myself out. And, this is the end result now of a very, very hard period for me. So here are some reference points. These are some of the podcasts that I have been on. These are just a few. I mentioned We Have Cancer, My Cancer Story podcast, Black Cancer, Breathing Wind podcast, and much more. On December the 14th, there was a podcast that I'm going to be on talking about Black women, called Black Women Rising. And it's about, where my life journey has ended. And I talk a lot about how I went the furthest in my life, the more resilient that I was. And for any of you who are looking for caregiving resources or anything, these are some of the podcasts. These are some of the blogs that I've been on. Ignite Hope Candles, Tina's Wish. I was in Cancer Wellness Magazine. I wrote about one of our run walks of the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition, Illinois chapter, and Splash Magazine, Bump in the Road. And as I mentioned, I do write for caregiving.com. I recently have a post on compound caregiving, taking more than care of one person at a time, and some tips that you can do. National Black Family Cancer Awareness Week was back in June. So that was something that the FDA, that's something new that they introduced. So I also wrote about that. So here you can find me on LinkedIn. I also write a column for Curvicality.com. It's a magazine, an online magazine for plus size women. And here's my email address. So thank you, everyone. Any questions?
So I'm curious, for those of you who've been in a career transition or have gone back to work after caregiving has ended, or have lost a job because of caregiving, what was your best tip to help you really? Kandis, can you share your screen again with your contact information? What was your best courageous step? You know what, I'm going to, what was your best courageous step that you took? Okay, so Heather is wondering, any advice for someone who says she only has a year or so left in her caregiving, where she can start, as there are so many years or gaps in her resume? So what do you think, Kandis?
So I think it says, any advice for someone who says she only has a year, so many years of gaps. So you can start with temp agencies. That's a really good way to get your foot in the door. And again, like I said, you can volunteer. You can offer your services up for free and then see what they have available. Also, you can, when you email people and when you have, you can explain on your cover letter, because this is another thing that I did. I explained on my cover letter why I was out of the workforce. And that also helped. Don't go into massive detail, just to give them a small snippet of it. I was out of the workforce because my mom got sick, and then you can just continue on the conversation, or my loved one got sick, or I was doing caregiving duties. Again, you need to say why you were, because one lady actually looked at me like I was a loser at a job interview because she didn't think that I was actually she said that my resume looked like I was just a young girl out of college with no experience. So the way that you navigated that, the way I navigated was I added it to my cover letter. And then when they asked me, I just expounded on it.
I want to mention too that our certified caregiving consultants and I have created a certified family care manager training. I really believe that our a better title for our work rather than family caregiver is family care manager. So we've created a training program that is a certified family care manager program. And that becomes something you can put on your resume. So you no longer have a hole in your resume, you have a position that indicates you managed a budget, you managed a team, you made strategies, you made difficult decisions, and that is a way to formalize what experience you've been through during caregiving. There's an official title, it's a profession. It's not a hole in your gap. There actually is a professional job that you had that was related to caregiving.
And you can say that you got paid, your paying amount, thank you, Denise, was room and board. You can say that you took care of this. And I used to babysit as a teenager. So when I went to nanny agencies, I put that on there, that I was caregiving in a family and I wasn't a house manager, but I did balance the budget and I did do this and I did do that. Those things helped me with my job first too. I also sent an article, the link for my article, someone asked about it.
Okay, and I also think that you can, something that Kandis really talked about is this idea that you can really commit to a vision for yourself. And it does not matter that others don't buy into your vision. It only matters that you do. So stay to your vision. And Kathy gave us a great movement to use, which is running. Have your vision and then run for it, run for it, run for it, run for it. Yeah. Okay, and I also think this idea that we can get help for our own emotional needs and we can be gracious and gentle with ourselves during grief, which we talked about that a couple times during our time together. When you are in a grieving situation, it is tough.
Yes, it is.
Last week during our Big Ideas event, I presented an idea about how we can have a compassionate return to work, whether it be after a family member's death or a family member's health crisis. And as a result of that event, the attendees asked me to put together some words that you can say to a colleague who's returning to work after a death. So it is up on Care Years Academy as well, and I can share that for you guys when we take a little bit of break. Okay.
And again, remember, you start out slow, start slow, but gradually. And the more persistent that you are, the more responses that you will get. And remember, don't take every job rejection personally. That's easy to do in this type of a situation.
And take breaks. So you might feel like, okay, today I'm gonna just pound out the resumes. I'm gonna send them out to everyone. And then the next day you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so discouraged. Take a break. It's not about quitting. It's just about taking a break. Give yourself a little bit of a time. I also say, give yourself a chance to take a break from the worries around this situation. Because even if you feel like I'm going to take a break, I'm going to just go out this morning and take a walk. Take a break from the worries when you take a walk as well. You know, Christine, that's a really great question. So is there a list of well-worded skills and expertise that a post-caregiver could draw from on resume building? And I actually have some resources and I can share them when I do the follow-up email with the archives. I'll share some resources. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks, Kandis.
Thank you.